Okay, let's dive into this, because today we're unpacking a fascinating little micro-mystery from the world of fish keeping. Welcome to The Explainer. We're looking at a brilliant piece of observation straight from a hobbyist's field notes, focusing on the Polar Parrot Cichlid and something really intriguing called the exposed cave strategy. You know, it's a perfect example of how just paying a little bit of closer attention can completely flip our understanding of a situation. It just goes to show that there are incredible lessons waiting for us in the most everyday places. So before we even get to the specific fish we're looking at today, I want you to think about something. How do fish actually find a mate in an aquarium? I mean, it sounds pretty simple, right? But honestly, think about the limited space, the totally artificial environment, and the sheer challenge of standing out in a crowded tank. For cichlids, establishing territory and finding the right partner is a high-stakes game. The environment has to be absolutely perfect for romance to bloom, or, well, in this case, for bonding to happen. The answer to this question completely dictates how these animals interact with literally everything around them.
All right, so that brings us to Section 1, the fish store field trip.
We're stepping right into the shoes of our source author, Ang, who operates kind of like an observant detective out in the field. The whole mission here is purely about observing the Polar Parrot Cichlid population to learn something new. The insights we're unpacking today come directly from Ang's detailed notes while watching this specific, super fascinating fish population in a busy retail environment. Ang isn't just, mindlessly walking past the tanks buying fish food. They're actively looking for patterns, taking notes, and decoding clues in the fish's behavior. It really shows that you don't need some pristine, sterile laboratory to make cool discoveries. Sometimes you just need patience, a sharp eye, and an afternoon at your local pet shop. Let's move to Section 2 and see how this builds, the exposed cave strategy.
Now, here's where things get really interesting. An exposed artificial cave is essentially an open structure used in an aquarium to create the ideal environment for cichlid pairing or bonding. Now, I want you to think of this as the ultimate bachelor pad for a fish. It's not a secret hiding spot to disappear into. Actually, scratch that, it's the exact opposite. It's an open, highly visible piece of prime real estate. By claiming this open structure, the fish is essentially putting up a giant neon sign to the rest of the tank.
I absolutely love this direct quote from Ang's notes. The largest or dominant fish has occupied the artificial cave and is waiting for a female to pair up with him. It's almost like the fish has set up a dating profile right there in the middle of the tank. He finds the best, most exposed cave, moves all his stuff in, and then just waits to see who swims by and is impressed by his excellent choice in artificial aquatic real estate. This was Ang's big realization. The exposed cave isn't for hiding at all. It's a deliberate, highly confident strategy for attraction.
Which leads us to a bit of a twist in Section 3, the gender identification mystery.
Now, we've actually got a case of mistaken identity right in the middle of our bachelor pad. Because just because a dominant fish claims the cave doesn't mean it's immediately obvious exactly who is waiting inside. We hit a classic red herring, an orangish coloration on the tail fin. Ang initially looked at this large, dominant cichlid sitting proudly in its exposed cave and thought, okay, this must be a female. Why? Well, because of that specific eye-catching orangish hue on its tail. It's a very common human trap, right? We see one distinct, flashy visual cue, and our brains just jump straight to a conclusion without verifying the rest of the data. And this brilliantly illustrates why sustained observation is just so important. Ang's initial thought was female, relying purely on that orangish tail fin coloration. But the observed reality? It was actually a male. So how did Ang figure this out? By simply not stopping at that first glance. The longer Ang washed the fish, the more the true physical traits stood out, specifically the pointy, elongated fins. That bright orange color was essentially just a visual distraction, a completely unreliable marker that led straight to the wrong conclusion.
Okay, let's lay out the facts in Section 4. Key traits to look for.
So the crucial point is this. Having cracked the case of the disguised bachelor, our fish-keeping detective gives us the concrete facts. If the bright colors can lie to us, what should we actually be looking at to properly identify the gender of these Polar Parrot cichlids? Well, definitely don't rely on the flashy orangish coloration. Instead, you're going to want to lock these 3 reliable gender clues into your memory. First, overall size. Remember, it was the largest dominant fish claiming the cave in the first place. Second, look at the actual shape of the fins. You want to look for those pointy, elongated fins to indicate a male. And third, fish behavior. The very act of confidently claiming that exposed artificial cave and just waiting for a mate, that was a massive behavioral clue in and of itself.
Let's wrap things up in Section 5, applying the fish-keeping lessons.
This brings us to the end of the field trip, but it leaves us with an incredibly valuable lesson about the process of observation itself.
It was actually a highly successful trip, even with no fish purchased for the newly set up outdoor ponds. Think about that for a second. You don't literally have to buy something to gain immense value from an experience. The real takeaway here wasn't bagging up a fish in a plastic bag to take home. It was the pure joy of learning. Aang went in, took the time to observe carefully, corrected a personal misconception, and discovered something fundamentally new about how this fish interacts with its environment. Now that is the mark of a truly great field trip.
Now, what's really interesting about this is it makes you wonder, what mysteries might you be misinterpreting in your own backyard or hobbies? Are you falling for the orangish tail fin in your own life, jumping to quick conclusions based on the most obvious but maybe incorrect piece of information? This whole explainer is just a great reminder for all of us to slow down, watch closely, and look for the true indicators, the size, the shape, the actual behavior of the world around you. Because honestly, who knows what brilliant little truths you might uncover if you just take a second look.